Really, when you think about grades and how they're established, if my niece from St. Louis says, I got a B in social studies, what does that really tell me? Really, all it tells me is kind of how they compare against the other students. That's really all it does.
Report cards are something most of us recall from childhood, sometimes drawing disapproving frowns from parents, sometimes taped proudly to the refrigerator. But in today's world, is there a better way to assess learning than by comparing students to one another?
We would hope that the doctor's office doesn't operate the way it did 50 years ago, but for whatever reason, we tend to opt back to, I want my school to operate the way it did when I went to school.
I don't think grading works the way we've traditionally used it. It didn't make sense to me when I was a student. And it certainly doesn't make sense to me as a teacher. I am giving a percentage over 4 different areas in language arts that have 40 standards, but I'm giving 1 grade? I mean, that math doesn't work to me.
I use the mastery grading system, and I don't have daily assignments and daily grades. I don't have a grade book anymore. I do continual progressive work with the students and continual feedback with each one of them individually. So they don't actually get to complete a project or a marker in my class until they've mastered it. So they continually redo, reassess, revamp things until they get to the level they need to be mastery. So mine is a very individual basis. Parents have been very good about that. I don't have a traditional grade book anymore. They just, when they complete the course, they've completed their markers at a mastery level.
If a school decides to commit to an improved grading system, teachers will be integral in developing it. Yet teachers may feel they are being asked to make a sacrifice near and dear to their professional hearts.
It's really hard having conversations about changing how we grade. And I know personally as an educator, a lot of my self-esteem as an educator revolved around my grading system.
You have a great grading system, that's wonderful, but how much is it helping the student? If your grading system is great, then it's helping that student to realize where they are in their learning. And sometimes their parents too, you've got to inform the parents. And I think we use grades more as our information to the parents, like the parents would like a little quick synopsis of their year, like they have 3 Bs and 2 As or whatever. And I guess I would tell that teacher, fill it out then. If you have a good grading system, then fill it out so it can communicate with the students better.
But there are common flaws, central even to grading systems conscientious teachers have worked to perfect and keep fair for years. The flaws stem from expectations schools have for student behavior.
Because many of the grading practices we have traditionally are tied to behavioral issues rather than to academic learning. So it's, in order to change the grading mindset that we have traditionally as parents and as teachers and administrators, the business community, is to educate about what true learning is and how to measure that.
The grade really should represent their learning and their progress and their knowledge and their skills. And when you start mixing behavior issues with that, it really confuses what that grade really means anymore. And so often our advice at school is, if you need to hold kids accountable for behavior, then have a separate piece where you delineate what that behavior is and hold them accountable to it.
Turning in late work is a behavior that regularly finds its way into grading.
If a student turns in a top-notch paper but it's late, if you give it a lower grade, then you're not really reflecting what it is they're able to know, or what they can do, or what they know.
In a similar way, averaging grades across a semester doesn't result in an accurate reflection when a student starts low, but works hard to achieve a degree of mastery.
If a student is able to demonstrate at the end that they've got it, what should it matter that they started at a low point? And really, to me, I don't think we as educators appreciate this whole system that I'm talking about with averaging, how that impacts students and their self-perceptions and their whole look at school in general. I got to think that for a lot of students in that situation, they're saying, I'm never going to win.
And then there are common grading practices that thoroughly sabotage systems based on numerics, inclusion of zeros, or arbitrarily docking points.
If we're going to place grades, any kind of rationale, number or letter otherwise, onto a content area of skills, and we're going to water that down positively or negatively with something that doesn't attribute itself to the actual academic skill, then we're not actually, it's irrelevant. The score is now irrelevant. It doesn't matter if it's a number, it doesn't matter if it's a letter. You don't actually know where the weight is. There's also no consistency.
One of the examples I give teachers is, let's say you're a basketball coach and you're having practice and one of the kids shows up late for practice. And so the coach walks up and says, you know, you were late today, so I'm going to dock your free throw average 10 points for being late. That doesn't make any sense, because now that free throw average means nothing.
Yet grading practices along those lines are sometimes defended by people who say they represent the hard ways of the real world.
I was reminded recently with a research article I was reading where the person responded, who of us in the real world, the real work world, can say, I'm not going to turn in this work, just give me a 0. None of us can. Bottom line is, in work, if there's an issue, then you have to get it done. And if it means getting help or whatever, then you get it done. But taking a 0 and not doing it is not real world.
In answer to those who ask what might replace letter grades and class rankings, school leaders are considering options that are very much real world.
Some of what we hear is that if students are able to put together a portfolio of things, projects, and work that they've done, or almost like a resume of things that they've been able to do either through some of their work in the content or even in service projects mixed with what they're doing in school, that they're able to actually demonstrate more to a college that they're ready than having a number that says they're a 3.8.
Many universities are currently rethinking their admissions process.
Ultimately, we're trying to make a decision on our side if a student is going to be successful, because any college across the United States doesn't want their students to only start. They want to see them successfully finish and allow that student to get the best return of investment on their dollars.
There hasn't been any school or university yet that's come to us and said, we're just not going to consider your learners because you do a different style of grading.